The stray cat stole fish for her kittens, but when the fishmonger caught her, the alley reeked of stale garbage and damp earth. A chill wind whipped through the narrow passage, sending shivers down the spine of the tabby cat huddled beneath a discarded cardboard box. Her fur, a tapestry of brown and gray stripes, was matted and dusty, but her green eyes shone with an unwavering intensity. This was Mama, a seasoned survivor of the city's unforgiving streets, and her gaze was fixed on the 3 tiny bundles of fur nestled beside her kittens. Each kitten was a miniature replica of their mother, their stripes a symphony of browns and grays, their eyes still closed to the harsh realities of their world. Mama licked each one in turn, her rough tongue a comforting caress against their soft fur. They were her world, her reason for being, and she would move heaven and earth to protect them. Life in the alley was a constant struggle for survival. Food was scarce, and danger lurked around every corner. Mama had learned to scavenge for scraps, her keen senses guiding her to discarded leftovers and the occasional forgotten morsel. But with 3 hungry mouths to feed, her efforts often fell short. The kittens were growing rapidly, their tiny meows becoming more insistent with each passing day. Mama's heart ached with worry. She knew she had to find a more reliable source of food, a place where she could secure a steady supply for her growing family. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the alley, Mama caught a tantalizing scent wafting on the breeze. It was the aroma of fish, fresh and succulent, a feast for a hungry cat. Her senses led her towards the source, her heart pounding with anticipation. The fish market, a bustling hub of activity during the day, was now deserted. The vendors had packed up their wares, leaving behind a trail of enticing smells and the promise of a much-needed meal. Mama's instincts told her this was her chance, a risky but necessary venture to ensure her kitten's survival. With a deep breath, she slipped through a gap in the fence, her lithe body navigating the maze of stalls and crates. Her eyes scanned the area, searching for an unguarded prize. And then she saw it, a glistening salmon, left unattended on a nearby counter. Mama's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the answer to her prayers. But the fish was out of reach, perched precariously on the edge of the counter. She would have to be quick, precise, and above all silent. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her muscles and leaped. Her claws found purchase on the edge of the counter, and with a swift maneuver, she snatched the salmon in her jaws. The fish was heavy, but adrenaline coursed through her veins, giving her the strength she needed. She turned to flee, her heart pounding like a drum. But as she made her escape, a loud crash echoed through the market. She had knocked over a stack of crates, alerting the night watchman to her presence. Mama's instincts kicked in. She darted through the maze of stalls, the watchman's shouts echoing behind her. Her agile body weaved through the obstacles, her paws barely touching the ground. Finally, she reached the gap in the fence, the salmon still clutched firmly in her jaws. With a burst of speed, she squeezed through the opening and raced back towards the alley, her heart pounding with relief. She had done it. She had secured a feast for her kittens, a meal that would sustain them for days to come. As she reached her makeshift den, her kittens greeted her with excited meows, their tiny bodies wriggling with anticipation. Mama dropped the salmon at their feet, her heart swelling with pride. She had faced danger and emerged victorious, all for the love of her kittens. As they devoured their meal, she watched with a contented purr, her maternal instincts fulfilled. The salmon, a temporary reprieve from the gnawing hunger, was quickly devoured. Mama watched her kittens, their bellies full for the first time in days, a sense of relief washing over her. But the reprieve was short-lived. The memory of their ravenous hunger lingered, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their existence. Days turned into nights, and the pangs of hunger returned. The kittens, their bodies growing rapidly, demanded more sustenance than Mama could scavenge. Their meows, once playful and curious, now carried a note of desperation. Mama's heart ached with each plaintive cry. She ventured out again and again, her senses alert for any sign of discarded food. But the city, once a bountiful source of scraps, seemed to have tightened its grip on its waste. Garbage bins were secured, leftovers were scarce, and Mama returned to her kittens each night with little to offer. The alley grew colder, the wind carrying a biting chill that seeped into their bones. The cardboard box, their only shelter, offered little protection from the elements. Mama huddled her kittens close, sharing her body heat, but even her warmth couldn't fully shield them from the harsh realities of their environment. One particularly bleak evening, as rain lashed against their makeshift shelter, Mama watched her kittens shiver. Their cries were weak, their movements sluggish. Despair gnawed at her. She had to find a solution, a way to provide for her family before it was too late. The memory of the fish market, with its tantalizing aromas and abundance of food, returned to her. It was a risky proposition, a dangerous venture into the unknown. But the desperation in her kitten's eyes fueled her determination. She had to try. Under the cover of darkness, Mama slipped out of the alley, her senses heightened, her every movement cautious. The rain had washed away the familiar sense of the city, leaving her disoriented and vulnerable. But the image of her starving kittens propelled her forward. The fish market, a beacon of hope in the darkness, loomed ahead. The familiar smells of fresh fish filled her nostrils, reawakening her hunger and fueling her resolve. She had to succeed. This time, she wouldn't rely on chance. She would observe, plan, and execute her mission with precision. She would be the shadow in the night, the unseen hunter, securing a lifeline for her family. As she watched the vendors prepare for the day, she noticed a pattern. Each morning, a delivery truck arrived, laden with crates of fresh fish. The crates were unloaded and left unattended for a short period before being transferred to the stalls. This was her opportunity. The following morning, Mama arrived at the market before dawn. She concealed herself in the shadows, her eyes fixed on the delivery truck. As the crates were unloaded, she waited patiently, her muscles coiled, ready to spring into action. The moment arrived. The delivery driver stepped away, leaving a crate of sardines unguarded. Mama seized her chance. With a burst of speed, she darted from her hiding place, her claws finding purchase on the wooden crate. The sardines were slippery, their scales offering little grip. But Mama's jaws were strong, her determination unwavering. She pulled and tugged, her entire body straining with the effort. Finally, with a satisfying rip, she tore open the crate, exposing the silvery treasure within. She snatched a fish in her jaws, then another and another. Her movements were swift, her senses alert for any sign of danger. She had to get back to her kittens, their survival depended on it. With her bounty secured, she turned to flee. But as she made her escape, a voice boomed from the shadows. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Mama froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The night watchman, his face contorted in anger, emerged from the darkness. He had caught her red-handed. Panic surged through Mama's veins. Her green eyes widened, reflecting the dim light of the pre-dawn sky. The watchman, a burly man with a bushy mustache, advanced towards her, brandishing a broom like a weapon. Mama knew she had to act fast. Clutching the sardines tightly in her jaws, she darted past the startled watchman, her lithe body a blur of motion. He yelled and swung the broom, but she was too quick, too agile. She weaved through the maze of stalls, her paws barely touching the ground. The chase was on. The watchman, fueled by anger and a sense of duty, pursued her relentlessly. Mama's heart pounded in her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. But the thought of her starving kittens spurred her on. She leaped over crates, squeezed through narrow gaps, and scrambled over overturned barrels. The market, once a place of opportunity, had become a treacherous obstacle course. But Mama navigated it with the skill of a seasoned escape artist. The watchman, less agile, struggled to keep up. He cursed and swore, his heavy footsteps echoing through the market. But Mama was gaining ground, her instincts guiding her towards freedom. she spotted a small opening in the fence, a sliver of hope amidst the chaos. With a burst of speed, she dashed towards it, the watchman hot on her heels. She squeezed through the gap, the rough wood scraping against her fur. Freedom. She had made it, but her ordeal wasn't over yet. The watchman, enraged by his failure, had called for backup. 2 more figures emerged from the market, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Mama, her energy waning, knew she couldn't outrun them. She had to find a hiding place, a sanctuary where she could catch her breath and regroup. Her eyes scanned the alleyways, searching for a refuge, and then she saw it, a small, abandoned shed, its door slightly ajar. With a surge of adrenaline, she slipped through the opening, the sardines still clutched firmly in her jaws. The shed was dark and dusty, but it offered a temporary respite from her pursuers. She collapsed on the floor, her body trembling with exhaustion. The sardines lay scattered around her, a testament to her daring heist. But her triumph was overshadowed by fear. She was trapped, cornered, with no escape in sight. The voices of her pursuers drew closer, their footsteps echoing in the narrow alleyway. Mama's heart pounded in her chest. She had to find a way out, a way to protect her precious cargo. A small window high on the wall caught her attention. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was her only hope. Gathering her remaining strength, she leaped onto a stack of crates, her claws digging into the rough wood. She stretched her body upwards, her muscles straining with the effort. Finally, she reached the windowsill. The opening was small, barely large enough for her to squeeze through, but Mama was determined. She pushed and wriggled, her body contorting to fit through the narrow space. With a final heave, she tumbled onto the other side, landing with a thud on the soft earth. She was free. She didn't look back. She ran, her paws pounding the pavement, her heart soaring with relief. The sardines, her precious bounty, were still clutched in her jaws. She had done it again. She had outsmarted her pursuers, defied the odds, and secured a meal for her kittens. As she raced towards the alley, a sense of pride mingled with her exhaustion. She was Mama, the protector, the provider, the fearless hunter, and she would stop at nothing to ensure the survival of her young. Mama, her body weary but her spirit soaring, returned to the alleyway. Her kittens, awakened by her arrival, greeted her with excited meows, their tiny bodies wriggling with anticipation. She dropped the sardines at their feet, a wave of maternal love washing over her as they devoured their meal. As the kittens fed, Mama collapsed beside them, exhaustion finally claiming her. She had pushed herself to the limit, her body bearing the scars of her daring escape. But the sight of her kittens, their bellies full, their eyes shining with contentment, made it all worthwhile. Unbeknownst to Mama, her daring heist had not gone unnoticed. Across the street, in a small apartment overlooking the alley, an elderly woman named Mrs. Eleanor Peterson had witnessed the entire scene. Mrs. Peterson, a widow living alone, had always had a soft spot for animals. Her apartment was a haven for stray cats, a refuge for those abandoned and forgotten by the world. She had watched Mama and her kittens with growing concern, her heart aching for their plight. The sight of Mama, risking her life to provide for her young, had touched Mrs. Peterson deeply. She had seen the determination in the cat's eyes, the unwavering love that fueled her actions. It was a reflection of her own maternal instincts, a reminder of the sacrifices she had made for her own children, now grown and living far away. Mrs. Peterson decided to act. She couldn't stand by and watch this brave mother struggle any longer. She would offer her help, a safe haven for Mama and her kittens. The next morning, armed with a can of tuna and a bowl of milk, Mrs. Peterson ventured into the alleyway. She approached Mama cautiously, her voice soft and reassuring. "Here, kitty, kitty," she called, extending her hand with the offerings. Mama, her instincts screaming danger, hissed and backed away. She had learned to be wary of humans, their intentions often unpredictable. But the enticing smell of tuna was hard to resist. Hunger gnawed at her, and her kittens were growing restless. Mrs. Peterson, sensing the cat's hesitation, placed the food on the ground and retreated a few steps. "It's okay, kitty," she said gently. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." Mama watched the woman with suspicion, her green eyes narrowed. But the hunger pangs were overwhelming. She crept forward cautiously, her senses alert for any sign of threat. The tuna was delicious, a welcome change from the scavenged scraps she was accustomed to. As she ate, she kept a watchful eye on Mrs. Peterson, her body tense, ready to flee at a moment's notice. Mrs. Peterson, patient and understanding, sat quietly nearby, allowing Mama to eat in peace. She knew that trust had to be earned, especially with a creature as wary as a stray cat. Over the next few days, Mrs. Peterson continued to visit the alleyway, bringing food and fresh water for Mama and her kittens. Gradually, Mama's fear subsided, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She began to associate the elderly woman with kindness and sustenance. One day, as Mrs. Peterson approached, Mama surprised her by rubbing against her legs, a gesture of affection and trust. Mrs. Peterson's heart swelled with joy. She had finally earned the cat's confidence. "You're a good mama," she whispered, stroking Mama's fur gently. "You deserve a better life than this." And with that, Mrs. Peterson made a decision. She would take Mama and her kittens home with her, offering them a safe haven, a place where they could finally thrive. The transition from the harsh realities of the alleyway to the warmth and comfort of Mrs. Peterson's apartment was a gradual one. Mama, despite her growing trust in the elderly woman, was still wary of this new environment. The unfamiliar smells, the enclosed spaces, the strange sounds. It was all a bit overwhelming for a cat accustomed to the freedom of the streets. Mrs. Peterson, ever patient and understanding, allowed Mama to explore at her own pace. She set up a cozy corner in the living room, complete with a soft blanket and a scratching post. She placed the food and water bowls nearby, ensuring Mama had easy access to sustenance. The kittens, on the other hand, adapted quickly to their new surroundings. They explored every nook and cranny of the apartment, their playful antics bringing a smile to Mrs. Peterson's face. They chased each other around the furniture, batted at dangling toys, and curled up in her lap for naps. Mama watched her kittens with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She was grateful for the safety and comfort Mrs. Peterson provided, but a part of her still longed for the freedom of the alleyway. The instincts honed over years of survival were hard to suppress. Mrs. Peterson, sensing Mama's unease, made a concerted effort to build a bond with the wary cat. She spoke to her in soothing tones, offering gentle strokes and reassuring words. She spent hours sitting quietly nearby, allowing Mama to acclimate to her presence. Slowly but surely, Mama's apprehension began to fade. She started to venture out of her corner, exploring the apartment with growing confidence. She would rub against Mrs. Peterson's legs, purring softly, a sign of affection and acceptance. One evening, as Mrs. Peterson sat reading by the fireplace, Mama surprised her by jumping onto the sofa and curling up beside her. Mrs. Peterson's heart swelled with joy. This was a breakthrough, a sign that Mama was finally starting to feel at home. From that day forward, their bond deepened. Mama would follow Mrs. Peterson around the apartment, her tail held high, her green eyes shining with contentment. She would greet her at the door each morning, purring loudly, her body vibrating with affection. Mrs. Peterson, in turn, showered Mama and her kittens with love and attention. She played with them, groomed them, and spoke to them as if they were her own children. The apartment, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with the sounds of purring and playful meows. Mama, once a hardened survivor of the streets, had blossomed into a loving companion. She had found a home, a family, a place where she could finally let down her guard and embrace the simple joys of life. The kittens, now thriving in their new environment, were a constant source of amusement and delight. They brought a renewed sense of purpose to Mrs. Peterson's life, filling the void left by her departed family. The bond between the elderly woman and the rescued cat family was a testament to the power of compassion and kindness. It was a reminder that even in the midst of hardship and loss, love and companionship could flourish, bringing healing and joy to those who opened their hearts. Life in Mrs. Peterson's cozy apartment settled into a comfortable routine. The kittens, now several months old, had transformed into rambunctious young cats, their playful energy filling the once quiet rooms. They chased each other up and down the hallway, wrestled on the living room rug, and pounced on imaginary prey with ferocious glee. Mama, though still retaining a hint of her streetwise caution, had relaxed into domesticity. She spent her days basking in sunbeams streaming through the windows, grooming her now sleek and glossy fur, and indulging in long naps on Mrs. Peterson's favorite armchair. The bond between the elderly woman and the feline family deepened with each passing day. Mrs. Peterson, who had lived a solitary life since her husband's passing, found immense joy in caring for her new companions. She spoke to them constantly, sharing stories of her past, her hopes, and her fears. The cats, in turn, offered her unconditional love and companionship, filling the void in her heart. The kittens, christened Whiskers, Patches, and Boots by Mrs. Peterson, had distinct personalities. Whiskers, the eldest, was the most adventurous, always exploring new territory and testing boundaries. Patches, the smallest and most timid, preferred to stay close to Mama, seeking comfort in her presence. Boots, the most mischievous, delighted in playing pranks, batting at Mrs. Peterson's knitting needles and unraveling her yarn balls. Mama, ever the watchful mother, kept a close eye on her offspring, intervening when their play became too rough or their explorations took them too far. She had relinquished her role as provider, but her maternal instincts remained strong. Mrs. Peterson, in her wisdom, understood the importance of routine for her feline companions. She fed them at the same time each day, ensuring they had a balanced diet of wet and dry food. She cleaned their litter box meticulously, maintaining a hygienic environment. And she dedicated time each day to playing with them, using feather wands and toy mice to stimulate their natural hunting instincts. The apartment, once filled with the silence of solitude, now echoed with the sounds of purring, playful meows, and the soft thud of paws on carpet. Mrs. Peterson, surrounded by her furry companions, felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in years. One sunny afternoon, as Mrs. Peterson sat on the balcony, enjoying a cup of tea and the gentle breeze, Mama jumped onto her lap, purring loudly. Mrs. Peterson stroked the cat's fur, marveling at the transformation she had witnessed. "You've come a long way, Mama," she whispered, her voice filled with affection. "You're safe now. You and your babies are home." Mama, her green eyes half closed in contentment, nuzzled against Mrs. Peterson's hand, a silent acknowledgement of her gratitude. The alleyway, with its dangers and uncertainties, seemed a distant memory. This was her life now, a life of comfort, security, and love. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the balcony, a sense of unease crept into Mama's heart. The world outside, with its unpredictable dangers, still held a lingering threat. And she knew, deep down, that her idyllic existence could be shattered in an instant. The peaceful rhythm of their days was disrupted by an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Peterson, returning from her weekly grocery shopping trip, was greeted at her door by a stern-faced woman with a clipboard and an officious air. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the woman said, her voice sharp and clipped. "I'm Ms. Jenkins from Animal Control. We received a complaint about an excessive number of cats in this apartment." Mrs. Peterson's heart sank. She had been so caught up in the joy of caring for Mama and her kittens that she had neglected to consider the potential consequences. Her apartment building had strict rules regarding pets, and she knew she was in violation. "Oh dear," she stammered, her voice trembling. I didn't realize." Ms. Jenkins, unmoved by Mrs. Peterson's distress, continued, "According to our records, you are only permitted to have one registered pet. You currently have 4. Mama, sensing the tension in the air, retreated to the safety of the living room, her kittens trailing behind her. They watched with wide eyes as Mrs. Peterson pleaded with the animal control officer. "Please, Ms. Jenkins," she begged. "They're not just pets. They're my family. I rescued them from the streets. They were starving." Ms. Jenkins remained impassive. "I understand your sentiment, ma'am, but rules are rules. You will have to rehome 3 of the cats. I'll give you a week to comply." With that, she turned and left, leaving Mrs. Peterson in a state of despair. The thought of parting with Mama or any of her kittens was unbearable. They had become an integral part of her life, a source of comfort and companionship she couldn't imagine living without. The week that followed was filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Mrs. Peterson contacted every animal shelter and rescue organization she could find, but none had the space to take in 3 cats. She even considered placing an ad in the local newspaper, but the thought of her beloved companions ending up in the wrong hands was too much to bear. Mama, sensing Mrs. Peterson's distress, became increasingly agitated. She paced the apartment restlessly, her tail twitching, her green eyes filled with worry. The kittens, oblivious to the impending threat, continued their playful antics, their innocent joy a stark contrast to the gloom that had settled over the apartment. As the deadline approached, Mrs. Peterson's desperation grew. She couldn't bear the thought of losing her feline family. She had grown to love them, to depend on them. They were her lifeline, her reason for living. On the eve of Ms. Jenkins' return, Mrs. Peterson sat on the sofa, Mama curled up beside her, the kittens nestled at their feet. Tears streamed down her face as she stroked Mama's fur, her heart heavy with grief. "What are we going to do, Mama?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I can't lose you. I can't lose any of you." Mama, sensing her distress, nuzzled against her hand, her purr a soft rumble of comfort. In that moment, a surge of determination coursed through Mrs. Peterson's veins. She wouldn't give up without a fight. She would find a way to keep her family together. The morning of Ms. Jenkins' return dawned with a heavy sense of dread. Mrs. Peterson, her eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night, paced the apartment, her mind racing with possible solutions. She considered hiding the cats, but she knew it was a futile effort. Ms. Jenkins was thorough, and she would undoubtedly find them. A knock on the door sent a shiver down Mrs. Peterson's spine. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. As she opened the door, Ms. Jenkins stood on the threshold, her expression as stern as ever. "Good morning, ma'am," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Are you ready to comply with our regulations?" Mrs. Peterson, her voice trembling, explained that she had been unable to find new homes for the cats. Ms. Jenkins, her patience wearing thin, informed her that she would have to confiscate the animals.
"No,"
Mrs. Peterson cried, her voice filled with desperation. "Please, you can't take them. They're all I have." Ms. Jenkins, unmoved by her pleas, entered the apartment, her eyes scanning the room. Mama, sensing the danger, herded her kittens under the sofa, their tiny bodies trembling with fear. The ensuing scene was chaotic. Mrs. Peterson, frantic and distraught, tried to block Ms. Jenkins' access to the cats. The kittens, their cries echoing through the apartment, scurried in all directions. Mama, her maternal instincts kicking in, hissed and swatted at the intruder, her claws extended in defense. In the midst of the commotion, tragedy struck. Patches, the smallest and most timid of the kittens, darted out from under the sofa, his fear overwhelming his caution. He ran straight towards Ms. Jenkins, who, startled by his sudden appearance, stepped back instinctively. Patches, disoriented and confused, ran into the open balcony door, his tiny body disappearing over the edge. Mrs. Peterson screamed, her heart stopping in her chest. She rushed to the balcony, her eyes searching frantically for the fallen kitten. Below, on the concrete pavement, lay Patches, his small body motionless. Mrs. Peterson's world crumbled around her. She sank to her knees, her sobs echoing through the apartment. Ms. Jenkins, her face pale with shock, retreated from the apartment, her mission forgotten. The sight of the fallen kitten had shaken her, reminding her of the fragility of life. Mama, witnessing the tragic event, let out a mournful cry. She rushed to the balcony, her eyes fixed on the lifeless form of her beloved kitten. Her maternal heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The apartment, once filled with the joyful sounds of playful kittens, was now shrouded in silence. The weight of grief hung heavy in the air, suffocating Mrs. Peterson and Mama with its intensity. The days that followed were a blur of tears and despair. Mrs. Peterson, consumed by guilt and sorrow, barely functioned. She blamed herself for Patch's death, her mind replaying the tragic event over and over again. Mama, her grief palpable, refused to eat or drink. She spent her days curled up in a corner, her eyes fixed on the balcony door, as if waiting for Patches to return. Her once vibrant spirit was extinguished, replaced by a deep and abiding sadness. The loss of Patches had cast a dark shadow over their lives, a reminder of the fragility of happiness and the enduring pain of loss. Mrs. Peterson and Mama, united in their grief, clung to each other for comfort, their shared sorrow a bond that transcended species. The weight of grief pressed heavily upon Mrs. Peterson and Mama. The once vibrant apartment felt eerily silent, the playful scampering of 3 kittens reduced to the hesitant steps of 2. Whiskers and Boots, sensing the shift in their world, were subdued, their usual boisterous play replaced by quiet cuddles with their grieving mother. Mrs. Peterson, lost in a fog of sorrow and guilt, neglected her daily routines. Meals went uncooked, dishes piled up in the sink, and the apartment, usually a haven of order and cleanliness, fell into disarray. The only task she attended to with any regularity was feeding Mama and the remaining kittens, a mechanical act driven by a sense of duty rather than love. Mama, consumed by her grief, remained withdrawn. She barely touched the food Mrs. Peterson offered, her once sleek fur becoming matted and dull. She spent her days curled in a tight ball, her green eyes, once bright and alert, now clouded with sadness. One evening, as Mrs. Peterson sat by the window, staring at the cityscape bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun, a gentle purr broke the silence. She looked down to see Boots rubbing against her leg, his big green eyes gazing up at her with concern. The small gesture, a simple act of affection, pierced through the fog of grief that had enveloped Mrs. Peterson. She reached down, her hand trembling, and stroked Boots' fur. As she did so, a wave of warmth spread through her, a flicker of the love she had almost forgotten. Looking across the room, she saw Whiskers curled up beside Mama, his head resting on her flank. Mama, though still visibly grieving, was grooming her son, her tongue moving rhythmically across his fur. The sight, a testament to the enduring power of maternal love, brought tears to Mrs. Peterson's eyes. In that moment, a realization dawned on her. She couldn't let grief consume her. She had to find a way to heal, for her own sake and for the sake of the cats who depended on her. She had to honor Patch's memory by cherishing the life that remained. With renewed determination, Mrs. Peterson began to rebuild her life. She cleaned the apartment, restoring order and cleanliness to her surroundings. She cooked nutritious meals, forcing herself to eat to regain her strength. And she dedicated herself to caring for Mama and the remaining kittens, showering them with love and attention. Slowly, life began to regain its rhythm. The laughter of children playing in the park across the street no longer brought a fresh wave of grief. The sight of a mother cat with her kittens no longer evoked a painful reminder of her loss. Mama, too, began to heal. She started to eat again, her appetite gradually returning. She played with Whiskers and Boots, her maternal instincts reasserting themselves. And she sought out Mrs. Peterson's company, curling up beside her on the sofa, her purr a soothing balm to their shared sorrow. The bond between them, forged in tragedy, deepened. They had faced loss together, grieved together, and now they were healing together. The apartment, once filled with the echoes of loss, was now a sanctuary of love and resilience. One sunny afternoon, as Mrs. Peterson sat on the balcony, Mama curled up in her lap, Mrs. Peterson looked down at the contented cat, her heart filled with gratitude. "We made it, Mama," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We made it through the darkness." Mama, her green eyes shining with a newfound peace, purred softly, a testament to their shared journey of healing and acceptance. They had faced the storm together, and they had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. The seasons changed, painting the cityscape in vibrant hues. Spring brought a burst of new life, with blossoming trees and chirping birds filling the air with a sense of renewal. Summer arrived with its long, sun-drenched days, inviting Mrs. Peterson and her feline companions to bask in the warmth on the balcony. Autumn painted the leaves in fiery shades of red and gold, a reminder of the beauty that could emerge from loss. And winter brought its cozy evenings, with crackling fires and purring cats curled up on laps. Life in the apartment had found a new equilibrium. The playful energy of Whiskers and Boots filled the rooms with laughter and warmth. Mama, her maternal instincts tempered by experience, watched over her sons with a gentle vigilance. And Mrs. Peterson, her heart healed by the love of her feline family, embraced each day with a renewed sense of purpose. The memory of Patches remained, a bittersweet ache in their hearts, but it no longer cast a shadow over their lives. Instead, it served as a reminder of the preciousness of life, the importance of cherishing every moment. Mrs. Peterson, inspired by her experience, became an advocate for animal welfare. She volunteered at the local animal shelter, offering comfort and care to abandoned and neglected creatures. She spoke at community events, sharing her story and encouraging others to open their hearts and homes to animals in need. Mama, once a wary stray, became a symbol of resilience and love. Her story, shared by Mrs. Peterson, touched the hearts of many, inspiring them to see the beauty and strength within these often overlooked creatures. One day, a young couple, drawn by Mrs. Peterson's story, visited the apartment. They had recently lost their beloved cat and were seeking a new companion to fill the void in their lives. As they entered the apartment, their eyes fell upon Whiskers and Boots, their playful antics capturing their hearts. But it was Mama, with her gentle demeanor and wise eyes, who truly captivated them. They learned of her journey, her struggles, her losses, and her triumphs. They saw the deep bond she shared with Mrs. Peterson, a testament to the power of love and compassion. With tears in their eyes, they asked Mrs. Peterson if they could adopt Mama. Mrs. Peterson, her heart filled with a mixture of joy and sadness, agreed. She knew that Mama deserved a loving home, a place where she could continue to heal and thrive. As Mama left the apartment with her new family, Mrs. Peterson watched from the balcony, a single tear rolling down her cheek. She would miss Mama dearly, but she knew that she had given her a gift, a second chance at happiness. And as Mama settled into her new life, surrounded by love and affection, she carried with her the memories of her journey, the lessons she had learned, and the love she had shared. She had been a mother, a survivor, a fighter, and a friend. And now she was home. The story of Mama, the mother cat who stole fish for her kittens, is a testament to the enduring power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. It is a story that reminds us that even in the face of adversity, hope and happiness can prevail.